Hey, my name is Artem and this is KubeFM.
Who are you, what's your role, and where do you work?
Hello, my name is Artem Lajko. I'm working as Head of Platform Engineer for IITS Consulting, a startup coming from Germany.
Where does code quality break down first when changes span application code, Kubernetes configs, and CI pipelines in the same PR?
In the same PR, in the most cases, or from my experience, it breaks if config, for example, in the config part, if the pipeline changed some in the configs, and it breaks because the application code in the most cases coming from the developer. So they are the owner of the code, and the config parts are coming in the most cases from the platform team and also the pipelines. And if you put everything into one PR, you don't have this end-to-end change of ownership. So in the most cases, if something goes wrong, or this is how I experience it in my project, it breaks in the most parts in the config, or if the CI part try to change something in the same pull request. This is what I see because of the missing end-to-end ownership from code or from application code to the infra part.
Why do YAML and Helm changes consistently escape the same scrutiny as application code? What does that cost teams in production?
From my point of view, we treat code as code over the decades. So we have a lot of tests and we know how it works. But if we are taking a look on config, especially on YAML files, even if we say everything as code, we don't treat it similar because in the most cases, it's really easy readable. So, and it's, especially if you're now not just having YAML manifest, but having something like Helm umbrella charts or Helm charts with Helm umbrella charts, we are losing a lot of control and we are not testing very well. And we also not validate them compared to the code where we have unit tests, we have another test, we have a lot of frameworks. So this is what I've seen in the most cases. It's becoming very difficult to understand if something in your config breaks because you don't test it enough. And the cost, what I see from our project is, if you're using, like I already mentioned, something like Helm chart, Helm umbrella charts, and a lot of overlays, try to understand the chain, try to figure out where something breaks. It is a provider of the Helm chart. If I use overlays, if some admission controller, which pages are mutated, or if something happening in the CI, this is, from my point of view, you're losing the traces compared to the code where you don't have this a lot of overlays. And this is where it breaks compared to application code.
As AI writes more of the code going into Kubernetes deployments, what does good governance of that code actually look like?
Good guardrails. We need guardrails again. It's a little bit funny because in the past it was like we say we want to provide golden paths to the developer, and now we have AI as citizen of our platform, or I have an AI as citizen of my platform, and now we are saying we need guardrails. Because depending on the models you're using, you can solve a simple or just saying deploy me or generate me a deployment manifest with best practices. If you have an old model, if we're missing some security context, I don't know, privilege set of false, not allowing privilege, or just read-only stuff. And if you are having a newer model, you will get another quality. So from my point of view, or how we experience it, is now you need guardrails, so you can say everything is generated, it's now validated. So you can see everything from AI generated have a similar, like you creating a baseline and say if it's going to the baseline, it will work for you. This is how we experience it because it's not deterministic. It depends on the model you are using. And yeah, this is, I would say, we need guardrails again or governance to understand what is AI generated and how it fits into the infrastructure before you're even coming to deployment to production.
Where are engineering teams getting the AI code review right today, and where are they still flying blind?
If you, again, I can just speak from the point of view of a platform engineer, and if I have plain data, if I, for example, hydrate my manifest and I can see everything, so it's very easy to understand, not just only for me, also for the AI, what's working well, what's not. And also if the AI, if I'm using it for some simple stuff, like generate policies, generate some templates and so on. I call it low context profile, it works really well. But if I have something really complex or a lot of cascadation, like with the Helm chart, and I need to understand the domain, I call it the rich context. In the most cases, the AI fail really fast. And getting you for simple stuff like create me some, or how I create security context for this part, it generates you overlays, doesn't match to your Helm charts or to your umbrella Helm charts and to your infrastructure because they don't get the context. And then it's becoming easier for human to read it, or I mean, it's easier for human to write it by their own compared to AI because you have this rich context compared to the low context. It is where I see the difference, especially working with configuration as data.
What would it take for you to trust an AI recommendation on a production-bound infrastructure change? What's the bar?
The bar is really high. To answer the question directly, to trust AI, especially to deploy something in production for critical infrastructure, or if you're responsible for a critical managed platform, or if you're responsible for a platform. So it's becoming very difficult to trust AI. If you're doing some, I don't know, some documentation stuff, or if you have some code, or I mean just some comments, it's becoming very easy. And then we say, okay, it will maybe work, it will maybe not work. So we establish in our team, we say, okay, let's establish rules between AI and human-generated part. So we can say, if it's critical code or something can go wrong, we need to review it. If it's just some comments in this code, it's be okay. So now we also we modified our pull request templates with kind of, this is fully generated with AI. I understand the logic, but I don't get all the libraries they are called. And then you can click it on the pull request. So we understand if it's touch critical code and the coder or the platform engineer doesn't get it, so we don't trust it and we need to review it. If the coder say, I understand the code, I understand the library, I get it, AI just help me. Our point, what we want to achieve is to make it traceable, what's coming from the AI part, what's not, and based on this context, we try to think about it and integrate it, what we trust or what we not trust. So it's not so easy to explain where the bar is, but just to blindly to trust the AI to push it in production. I say at the moment not, maybe in the future. So this is how we handle it or try to handle it, but it's also a challenge to solve.
Kubernetes is over a decade old and still accelerating. What does the next era look like for teams trying to maintain code quality at that scale?
To maintain code quality at scale means for me to get back control over your sprawl of config. If I'm speaking at scale, I'm speaking of managing 1,000 clusters or 2,000 clusters, so a lot of applications. And then if you have, for example, a lot of overlays, like I already mentioned, with the same umbrella charts or customized, it doesn't depend on the tool. In the most cases, we have base and we have some patches or overlays because we don't repeat yourselves. So we don't repeat ourselves. And this is what we have now, I thinking a lot of platform teams at scales for quality need to get control back over this config sprawl or what I see as a project.
What are you working on next? What are you going to be building next?
I mean, it's not a secret anymore. Last Monday, we open sourced a tool or framework called Kubara. Kubara allows you to generate or to create your own distros. And we also use this framework to build a general distro, which is coming from internally, from some customers, and make it open source, not just a framework, but also the general distro. And now we try to solve at scale, getting visibility for the future, because the Cyber Resilience Act is coming end of 2026, 2027. In short, you need to understand your chain. And now we try to extend this framework. So you not just hydrate or generate your manifest, but you can also sign them, and you can also sign them. So you can push it to OCI registry, for example, and you can understand the whole chain, like images, like SBOM and so on. So in short, we just try to prepare not the platform that it scales, but we also try at scale to understand the whole graph and understand where the resource coming for the next reports you need to provide in 2027 if you need to understand your chain. This is what we try now to solve.
How can people get in touch with you?
I guess the easiest way will be just follow me on LinkedIn, drop me a direct message. I'm also publishing a lot of blogs on Medium. But if I publish them, I will create a LinkedIn post. So the easiest way is just follow me on LinkedIn.